That would be bad if we were recording everywhere except for audio.
Uh,
All right. Hi, Rai.
Hi. Look at the space we're in.
She is.
I love it. Oh, yeah. We need a little caffeine pick me up. I actually have actual caffeine today. You
I
called it
know.
out. I'm trying it. I'm trying it just to see how things go.
So this is new.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm nervous then.
There was, for everybody listening, there was one time where I think it was like a year into us hanging out,
Mm-hmm.
and we went to a coffee shop, and I didn't realize, I don't know what I was thinking, but I got a grande latte,
Yeah.
and I had two espresso things in it. And mid conversation with you, I was like, I'm talking so like much and loud
I probably loved
at
it.
Latasha. And I remember at the end of it, I said, I just want to apologize if I was a lot there because I didn't realize this had two espresso shots.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That happens. Happens to the best of us.
Right.
You know what else happens to the best of us? Brand deals.
They do.
Hopefully, if we're doing
They
doing it
do.
right, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, right. And I think today we wanted to talk about the back end
Yeah.
because we've talked about the front end in a previous
Mhm.
episode where it's how to get brand deals.
Yeah.
Once you get them, that's when the 90 email chains start. 90 emails chain starts, the process begins, you get things approved. My own take on it is that the negotiating phase is super important.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to get excited about a brand deal
Right.
and overlook that.
Mhm.
Would you agree?
Yes, it definitely is. I mean, I think that's true even just like for freelance work. I remember just learning that I was good at selling
Right.
and
You get a
deciding
client.
client
Right.
after client. And then I'm like, wait, I have to do all this work
Right.
now.
That's
Now
the hard part. You're like, wait a second,
Yeah.
I have to do all of this?
Yes.
It's kind of like how I was watching Project Runway. I had on the background while I was working.
Yeah.
And these people are talking about how hard the show is. And I'm like, imagine
Yeah.
once you win the show, then you have to develop your brand.
Yeah.
Like, that's when the real work comes in. And I think brand deals, it is similar.
Yeah.
Where like you think the hardest part is getting it. Or as Nicki Minaj, I think, said, it wasn't as hard getting to the top as it is staying at the top.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a little bit of the mentality.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you jump into it with
Yeah.
like a negotiating, I guess? Because I feel like
Yeah.
that's like the next phase usually that happens.
Yeah, so I'll try to reference like the most recent brand
Mhm.
deal that I've done. So typically they come into me. I do have a manager. That's like maybe a whole other topic. Maybe
Yeah, that
let,
is a
let
lot of
us
stuff.
know.
I don't have one for anyone like as like we'll do a comparison. I
Yeah, let
guess.
us know if you want to hear more about like the pros and cons because I've done both. But
Yeah.
so the manager ideally is going out and pitching me and bringing me deals. But like I said, we'll go with the most recent one, which just came
Mhm.
inbound. So they come in my email, they say, "Hey, Latasha, we love your
Hey.
content." If they do it right, because a lot of brands don't do it right.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I just got one that was like, could you do a YouTube video for $100 for a dedicated video and like $70 for an integration? Like those are always the sketchy ones.
Yeah, the ones that don't, there's definitely a way
Mhm.
where what you just said, if they say, hey, we love your content, we've checked it out already, and this is this is what we're offering you.
Yeah.
Versus like ones like that where they say, hey,
Yeah. $50.
how you
$50
doing,
holla.
sweet cheeks? What you want to do $100 for?
Yes.
Like it's like that kind of vibe, and I'm always
Sleazy.
like, I'm gonna pass.
Mhm.
I'm very nice about it though. I always like, thank you for thinking of me, because
Yeah.
I always try to think that like to them, they think they're offering a good deal, which is surprising. Or do they not?
Well, I think a lot of those are scams, honestly. Like, I
Could be.
think they're like information gathering scams.
Yeah.
I have no idea, but that's actually something I hear a lot from people is like, how do I know if brand deals are legit?
Mhm.
And always look at the email. Even
Yeah.
even if it looks like a really, they're professional, they're like, we love your content. I click on, in Gmail or whatever, I actually
Yeah.
click to open and look at the email. They should be emailing you from either an agency
Yep.
or a branded account. So like
Yeah.
Ryan at Nike.com
Yeah.
or Ryan at Dynamo Digital or whatever,
Yep.
not Ryan at gmail.com.
Yes.
I'm not going to say I've never gotten brand deals that were a little weird, but like,
Well, I've mentioned
proceed
how
with
like
caution.
Instagram messages sometimes come through about
Yeah.
brand deals, and those ones end up being lower quality.
Yeah.
The other points to look for in the email is, do they mention a client,
Yes.
specifically a brand that you might know, or you
Right.
can look at a website. And I always look at the website if I don't know the brand
Yeah.
and gauge the worth, like, even this one that reached out
Yeah.
seemed a bit off. I looked into the website, it said, okay, it seems like kind of legit. And it was related to automotive. So I said, okay,
Mhm.
Detroit, Motor City, that makes sense. And they have not gotten back to me.
Yeah.
And I spent all this time
Yep.
putting together a little package for them and stuff. So
Yeah.
mentioning them. And then also, if they can't mention the brand, which sometimes that does happen,
Yeah.
like look for that human element of saying,
Mhm.
like, we know it's not ideal.
Yeah.
Because, like, I just had a recent one say that. They said, we know it's not ideal. I really appreciated them saying that
Yeah.
to say, like, okay, human to human, we
Mhm.
know you can't mention the deal, but here's what we can tell you. What are you looking for? Like,
Yeah.
kind of like look for that, those
Yes.
human elements, right?
Yeah. So step one is vet the client,
Yo,
right?
there we go. I love
Make
that.
sure, do a little research before you respond, vet the client. Then from there, it kind of depends. Like, I mean, I have had brands that are like, here's the budget, here's the
Mhm.
deliverable. Those are rare. Typically, it's what are your rates?
Yeah, it's
Or,
always what are your rates for
yeah.
now. I feel
How
like
do you,
very rarely.
yeah.
I wish they would just tell
I
me what they
know. Just
want.
tell me how much money you have and I can
Tell me
decide
your budget,
if it works or
please.
not.
Please just tell me. Yeah, the
How,
rates thing I had to get comfortable with. It's
yeah.
it's uncomfortable. I think I was just kind of venting a little bit of the mental side of that
Yeah.
because I think I was just talking about it with my mom actually. Uh in that they asked me for my rate and it's just hard to think of that balance on your own.
Yeah.
But you are the one that knows. I mean, I've been doing this for 4 years.
Hmm.
Yes, there's other people like managers that can
Yeah.
maybe help, but no one knows my worth as much as me.
Right.
So it's tricky unless you've already worked with a manager for a long time. Like I know that there's like celebrities, they work with the same managers for my two favorite drag queens. They both have the same manager,
Yeah.
and they've been working with them for like 8 years.
Yeah.
So like obviously, I think they know their
Right.
worth, but it's hard to balance the rates because you can look into what the going rate is.
Hmm.
But honestly, at this point, I've put out so many. I just have my baseline,
Hmm.
and then on top of that, it deals with things like doubling rates, like we talked about in previous episodes with like paid usage rights.
Yeah.
But I will say it's hard because everyone approaches it
Yeah.
differently. Every client wants a completely different setup to where I can't just make a rate
Yeah.
and say I do go like estimates
Yeah.
because now like some look like other ones and I'll usually use that as a base. But then again, the product might be different to
Right.
where I feel like it's harder for me to do such a video, or maybe that I'll get a bigger impact
Hmm.
that I would probably want to charge them more because I know it's gonna do great.
Yeah.
And they're gonna make money off me, so I need to be sure that I'm allocating that right.
Right.
So that's hard.
Yeah, I agree. There's no, when people are like, what are your rates? I'm like, I mean, I discussed this with my manager. Basically, what is your floor? I think that's a good way
Ooh.
to think of
Yeah,
it.
that's
Of
the baseline.
who said this? It was some like old Hollywood
Mhm.
actress, or maybe it was Naomi Campbell. I don't remember.
I like quotes from her. Like she has
Yeah,
some good quotes in there in the
but
past.
I don't remember. It was supermodel. Somebody was like, I don't get out of bed for
Oh, I remember
under
that line.
X amount of dollars. And it sounds a little diva-ish, but I think it is important to think about like how much are you willing to get out of bed for?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, I get invited to events sometimes
Yeah.
and they don't offer money,
Yeah.
but it's for things that I like and
Yeah.
or maybe things that I have worked with in the past.
Mhm.
But it is hard for me
Yeah.
because it's like I know what they want
Hmm.
and I know they sometimes just can't afford it and I
Yeah.
sometimes just do it out of the goodness of my heart. But if you're get to a certain point with content creator, if you're offering that much that often out of the goodness of your heart, you're going to feel like you're being taken advantage of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a time and a place about, to work for free, if you
Yeah.
will, for lack of better words, because there's more than just money that has value, right? If you get invited to if RuPaul invites you to,
Love that. Would
yeah,
love
you would
that.
probably pay to do that. You'd pay
Yes,
for your own
oh
flight
yes,
and,
I would pay
all of that
everything.
because it's going to get you that much
Yes.
exposure
And it's very
to,
personal.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it's fun for you. It's going to get you exposure to, potential collaborators or
Hmm.
clients or whatever. So obviously there's different ways to vet value. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think come up with your rate for that project. I'm curious for you, Do you just do all of this via email or do you ever get on calls with
Hmm.
people?
No, I am such an emailer.
Yeah.
I sometimes after everything's all said and done, I'll do a creative call.
Yeah.
That's it though.
Okay.
Outside of that, I've done no calls, no Zooms.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, there's this one team I work with in particular where I love the team.
Yeah.
So it almost feels like it's like, I don't know,
Yeah.
a collaborative effort.
Right.
So I'll get on calls with them. But yeah, I did all via email because email allows, it's more so for me
Yeah.
because I need that time to think out everything. That's why,
Mhm.
honestly, I'm not a huge fan in entrepreneurship, my consulting. If anyone tells me I have to join their base camp or their
Oh my
project
gosh.
management software, I don't. I say, I do not do that
Yeah.
because people tend to message off the cuff. They
Mhm.
don't think about what they're saying. And email is really business texting
Yeah.
that makes people really think out every last thing. And even when I'm writing emails to these brands, because one email, as you know, could make a huge impact on how the contract looks or
Yeah.
what have you, it makes me be like, okay, hold on. I read it all through.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound the best.
Right.
Am I really fighting for me as much as I should?
Yeah.
And it allows me to really, really think before I hit send.
Yeah, that's interesting. So
How long are your emails?
uh
Like back to these people? Or like,
okay.
do they get lengthy?
Yeah. Okay. Some of my bigger brand deals I've had that have been that's talking the 1, 2, 3, 4, like the 5-figure brand deals.
Hmm.
Those have been like 60 email threads,
Yeah.
email chains back
Right.
and forth minimum. I mean, I'm like, wow. But I'm not going to do that for a $1,000
Right.
video integration. I'm
Mm-mm.
sorry. This is the price. Buy.
Yes.
Like, no
Because at that point,
offense.
it's all that time.
Yeah.
I mean, think about adding up
Yeah.
the time from those emails.
But what I was going to say is I actually I agree with you mostly, but I would encourage people like from a sales perspective, I think it's actually quite advantageous to get people on a call. When they say,
Yeah.
"What are your rates?" It is so much harder to say no to somebody who you
Mhm.
have a personal relationship with now and you have that buy-in and you're like, "Oh my gosh, Ryan, he was so nice. He was on
Mhm.
time to the meeting. He was great. Had such great energy.
Yeah.
Like he looked great on camera." That is going to stick in your head
Yeah.
when you're talking to the higher ups and trying to fight for Ryan to be a part of that campaign.
Right.
I think and even me, people who are more established have probably earned the right, for lack of better words, to maybe be able to just be like, hey, my portfolio speaks for
Right.
itself. But if you're in the beginning of this,
That's a good tip.
get people on a call.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Say,
actually.
hey, I'd love to discuss and so you vet the client, and then before even quoting the rate, you have to understand the scope of work. And I think that's what I ask in the email.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so what exactly are you looking for? Do you have a particular, because I could do a YouTube dedicated video, a YouTube integration, a
Mhm.
podcast read, an Instagram story,
Anything.
reel, blah, 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 blah. So I want to know what deliverables they want.
Right.
And then to your point, I also want to know, are you looking for exclusivity and paid usage rights? Because
much
those
that-
things are going to be layered.
Okay, let's give the tea right now. Do you think this is me being bad,
crack
but
my
like,
beer. No,
do you
I'm just
right?
kidding. Get a clack.
Honestly,
clack.
Liquid Death looking like beer is crazy to me. Like, I did not know this can existed, and it looks literally like a beer. And
Sponsor us.
it's such a good brand.
We need a sponsor.
Honestly, it is such a good. That's such a good idea to do that because that can be in every bar. Anywho, the tea is. Do you think that they purposefully, some people negate putting the usage rights because they hope the person doesn't ask about it, and then they just go put in the contract that's like 8 pages long?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to think everyone's good, but like it happens so often to where I'm like, you work in this space.
Yeah.
You know a rate is going to be defined by usage rights.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen often. It's just been once. And honestly, I think I ended up not working with them.
Mhm.
But just like, people got to watch out for that, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because people will try. If you have maybe like 20,000 followers, which is like, you could look at it and be like, oh, it's not a million. That's huge.
A lot of people.
That's huge.
That you're
So,
reaching.
and you have a lot of worth. So just be mindful that people, or even invited to the event, but then not really share any other details.
Yeah.
To where like, I love the people that invite me to an event. I've had one where they're like, here's your parking pass.
Yeah.
Also, we do kind of hope that you post this to your stories, but that's it.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for your candor. Thank you for your honesty,
Just sounded
because
so Midwest.
I
Wow.
Because like some people, I'm like, just be honest with me.
Mhm.
Like, tell me what the organic usage rights is from the gate. I shouldn't have to ask for paid or
Yeah.
organic usage. You know what the client wants, you know?
So
It's kind of interesting.
I always try to see the best in people for
Yeah,
sure,
me
which is
too.
like my, biggest strength and also greatest flaw for sure. But I'll say I don't think most brands are trying to like get over on us.
Yeah.
I think honestly that's a sign of like an inexperienced influencer marketing manager of they just don't really even know the value of that or don't even know that
Because
it's
it is a
in
newer
there.
space. So I do give
Mhm.
everyone, a little
It
bit of,
is. And I mean, this industry has moved so quickly.
yeah,
Like
it really has.
even just a few years ago, I wasn't even really thinking about that. Like that wasn't really like the whole UGC thing of using user generated content for ads is kind of like a newer trend.
Yeah.
In the past maybe 5 years or so, it's really blown up. So I think in the past, it's like, oh, where are you going to use this in your like internal brand collateral? I don't
Right.
care. But now it's like, wait, that's going to be a Facebook ad that's making you
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of dollars. I need a cut of that. So I try to see the best in people.
Maybe I didn't think about that though, with like the agencies kind of coming, like some of these have been there since the beginning of influencer marketing, and
Mhm.
maybe they just haven't updated their processes
Yeah.
to be including that because
Yeah.
it wasn't always a part of the conversation versus I guess me being like a newer,
Yeah.
creator in the space. I'm like, that's everything.
Yeah.
The only reason why I even wanted to ask that too is because I feel like I just don't want anyone to get taken advantage of.
Totally.
I see people, there's this one, I think I've mentioned it before, where like I saw this one ad where the person has been in the ad for a year. I've
Yeah.
seen the ad for a year.
Mm.
I hope that they knew
Yeah.
that it was going to be used for a year
Yeah.
and that they were able to charge accordingly because that's big money.
Oh yeah. And
To be in a commercial
so
like
many
that.
people haven't. I see
No.
like, especially in the beauty space, some of these like huge beauty gurus who had like millions of followers, they would be in like a sketchy ad
Yeah.
for some like one-off brand deal that they did because again this was not a part of the conversation in the early days.
Yeah.
Even me, I mean, not so much with brand deals, but there's like courses that I created for a few $1,000, which kept me afloat in the early
Mhm.
days of my freelancing, and now I'm like, they own my IP
Right.
forever. And now that I'm like bigger and more of like a thought leader, quote unquote, in the space,
Yeah.
like they're capitalizing off of
Yeah.
all of what I built. So anyway, do your research.
Vet the clients, do your research, know
Get
your
the
know your
scope.
base value.
Yeah. Yeah.
That you will not go under
Yep.
because you might get reached out to a lot. You
Yeah.
need to have a base value. And also, I mean, like, that's why we can't really answer it because, like,
Yeah.
your life situation could be like, I want money now and I
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah.
So you might need to just take the lower
For
one.
sure.
But
And I've done that. And
if
I
approaching
do that.
right,
I'm like,
right, same.
yeah, it's a slow month. My floor
Right.
maybe gets a little lower.
Like,
If the economy is
okay,
weird,
sorry, yeah,
the floor changes. But yeah, so understand the scope of the project. And then from there, you communicate that rate. You say,
Yep.
okay, based on the scope, here's my rate.
Yep.
So you're going back and forth via email. So are they coming back and being like, oh, actually, we only have this much?
Yeah.
Do you typically get a yes right
Yeah.
away?
So two situations have actually happened to where I've done what I think is worth, and then they've come back and say, hey, this happened, I think, even a year ago. They said, to be honest, we only have this much.
Yeah.
And would you do it for that? And I was like, you know what? I would.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's still a good value. But what I'll do, and this is where like I really hope people feel empowered. I've even said, okay, yes, but we're cutting this and that. And they'll be
Yes.
like, we're happy with that.
Yes.
Because I think they know what's up.
Mm-hmm.
So you can say, hey, this is like it gets me emotional a little bit. I've even had people say like, we know how much you deserve.
Yeah.
So we're going to push for you to get this.
Yeah.
And I've even I've been a bit vulnerable in some cases and said like, I really don't, I think they could tell I was a little bit newer to the situation. And they said, well, we're going to give you this.
Yeah.
And since then that really helped me to know there are some really good people working in these spaces
Mhm.
that will help you, but you do have to communicate with them.
Yeah.
You have to call.
Yeah.
I was going to say the call is especially good, like you said in the beginning,
Yeah.
when you're trying to figure out your rate.
Yep.
Because then you could say like, hey, what's your budget for it? You can always kind of just make them kind of answer first.
Yep.
So I've had the situation where they've come back and said lower, but then I've also had the situation where they just say, yep, that works for us. We'll
Yeah.
send the contract in tomorrow.
Yeah.
And, then I got to review the contract, which is like typically like 8 or 9 pages, but I read through the entire contract.
Yes. You do.
And a lot of them are structured very similarly.
Yeah.
But yeah, have you had that situation happen where have you ever had them come back and say like, "Whoa"? Because I think everyone's scared that
Uh-huh.
like they're gonna be like, "How dare you ask for that much?" That
Yeah.
doesn't happen.
Yeah. So this is something that again applies to freelancing as well. A mentor told me years ago, like, because I was so proud of myself when I was
Mhm.
freelancing and I was like, oh yeah, I'm such a good salesperson. Everybody's saying yes. And she was like, that's actually not great. You should probably
Ooh,
be getting no's
informative.
like 50% of the time,
50.
which is hard because I don't like
Right.
rejection. Who does?
Right.
But she's so right because it's like if everybody's like, oh, yep, automatically, it's like the dollar store. Like you
Yeah.
don't even think about what you're buying at the dollar store. You're just like, yep, that looks cool. That looks fun. I'm gonna
Yeah.
buy that. I don't want to be the dollar store. I want to be,
Yeah. Creme de la creme. Yeah,
whatever,
like
insert fancy brand here. The thing that you're thinking about, you're like, ooh, do I really want that? Oh,
yeah.
it's gonna really change my life if I buy this product. And you're weighing out the options. I remember this is probably like the second biggest brand deal that I've ever had. It's with a very, very well-known brand.
Mhm.
They were great to work with. I loved them. I was so nervous to send through the proposal. So here's something else.
The nerves of
Yeah,
sending through a
here's
proposal
another little tip,
is
and
heavy.
I'm curious what you do, but I actually like design a proposal in Canva. If
Yeah,
it's
I have that.
yeah, if it's just like a hey, we just want like a podcast read or something, I don't.
Mm.
But this was like it was a full campaign.
Yeah.
You know, there were multiple YouTube videos, multiple ad pieces, reels, all kinds of
Mhm.
things. So I designed like a full proposal in Canva. I was so nervous. I think the price was $40,000 or something.
Yeah.
And that was like the biggest one up until that point that I've ever
Mhm.
sent through. And I was like,
Wild. A
that's
salary.
yeah, that's like that was my first salary
That literally.
at GM, like a
Yes.
huge and they got back to me like maybe a week later and they were just like, sounds good. And I was like, damn it, I could have probably pushed for like 60, I mean,
That's true. I do hate
still
it when they're
super
like, "Yeah, that's
grateful.
perfect." You're like, "Dang it!"
Yeah,
Then I tend to think like, "Okay, maybe it was just exactly what they wanted."
yeah,
Because you know the space by now.
yeah.
I know the
Obviously,
space too. I think a little bit.
still grateful, but I'm like, you kind of don't want it to be like an immediate yes,
Yeah.
somewhat, because negotiation is a part of
Right.
business.
50% of mine, though, I will say, have needed negotiating
Yeah,
because they've come back and said lower, or like I've
yeah,
like whatever. So maybe that's a good like maybe not. Don't think of no's, I guess, in the
yeah,
sense of like you don't get it. Just think of no's as like half of them maybe should be conversations.
yes,
And like maybe lessons that you give. Not, I don't even think it's gonna lesson though,
yeah,
because like if you're growing as a creator, your needle for what is your baseline is probably gonna move too.
yeah. I would say that I very rarely get just like a, oh my gosh, that's way too much. I mean,
I've never gotten that.
yeah, I definitely get, hey, no, our
Yeah,
budget
I gotten
is
that. They've said like, yeah,
below.
our budget's like
And I've
way
gotten our
below.
budget is far below. Like, wow, you're asking minimum 5 grand for blah blah blah. We were thinking more like 1,500. We
Mhm.
understand if like you can't move forward
Yeah,
because that's way too low. And I appreciate that. And usually I do move on, but sometimes I can find a middle ground. And to what Ryan said too, I totally agree with this. That if I'm gonna go from, hey, my quote was 5 grand and you're telling me 15,
hmm,
we're cutting something off.
yeah,
That 90-second ad read is gonna be a 30-second
right.
or whatever.
And
That
I honestly lower my expectations. Like
yeah.
I think like or like I lower the energy that I'm gonna give it
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean they don't get a great product in the end. It's just
Yeah.
priority wise, I got all these emails and tasks to go through.
Yeah.
I might put yours off till the next day. Your
And
email
they have to
replying.
understand that.
Yeah, and be
They
like,
have to
hey, like I'm sorry, but like this is what I valued it compared to the work I'm already doing,
yeah.
on top of like my consulting, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's okay to do too. And because
Totally.
like I said, in the end, they're gonna get a great product
Yeah.
regardless.
For sure.
But
Yep.
um
So send through the rates, you negotiate, and then what? You mentioned the contract.
contract's huge because people, I mean, you can hire a lawyer
Yeah.
like to have things looked over, but I just look it over myself, 8 pages. I read it, make sure to read. I sit down with a nice little coffee
Mm-hmm.
and I read through that entire contract to make sure. And on a lot of times, and honestly, I kind of live for it. Is when I go through, I have my Word doc in
Yeah.
Google Drive, whatever, open, and I write out the changes that I require.
Yep.
And I've done that probably on 3 different contracts.
Yeah.
And I say, hey, this is everything else looks great,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm like, what do you think about changing these to these? Because I
Yep.
just think it makes sense.
Yep.
Or I'm fighting for myself a little bit more. And they go, yep. I'll send through. And like that makes me feel so boss to,
Mm-hmm.
to be like, hey, this contract needs an update.
Yeah.
Can
Right.
we change this?
Yeah, that's called redlining your
Yeah.
contracts. And You should do it. The things that I look out for, really, we already kind of talked about, but like
Mhm.
exclusivity and
Yeah.
usage rights are the two big ones. Don't just let them slip in. Hey, you have to be exclusive to us for a year
Yeah.
and I'm paying you a couple thousand
Yeah.
dollars. No, 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 no. If you are the only microphone company that I
Yeah.
can talk about for a year,
Right.
that's a you better be paying me like a salary,
Right. A year is
more.
a long time,
Yeah.
especially in your line of work
Yeah.
where like a lot of things overlap.
Yes.
If you're in like a specific niche and you're getting brand deals for specific, my brand deals tend to be all different
Yeah.
industries, so I don't need to worry about exclusivity as much.
Right.
But you know what's funny though is like I'll get a deal for some random industry,
Yeah.
and then like I have never gotten one. A month later,
Yeah.
a company in that same industry
I've
reaches
had that
out.
happen so many
And I'm
times
like,
too.
am I on a list somewhere or something?
I know.
Yeah. Oh wait. The one thing I was gonna say though about that contractually and exclusivity, is that this one brand, I forgot to mention it.
Hmm.
And they, I think, just put in their industry standard for exclusivity. And I was like, whoa. It
Yeah.
was like, I think it was like 6 months. And I said, hey,
Yeah.
um, can we do 3 months? And they
Yeah.
were like, yeah, that works. I'm like, I typically do 3 months if that's okay.
Yep.
And they were like, yeah, we get that. So
Yeah.
like, again, like you can be very conversational
I've had that happen as
down to the
well.
contract. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all negotiable. I've had that happen before too. And again, a lot of times they're like, "Oh, we didn't even
We didn't think about
we
it.
don't
Yeah.
really
That's just
care.
what's
It's
in
just
our,
what our lawyer, the
right,
default, the
recommends.
standard." Oh, the other things that I always pay attention to are payment terms. Like,
That's a big
you
one.
know, okay, this is a whole we could probably spend we might need to reset because I feel like this is gonna take a while. Unlike freelancing, what I always tell people, if you listen to my other podcast, I always tell you like get paid before you do the work.
Yeah.
Influencer work is typically not like that. Now I have, and
Yeah.
I actually do push for that still. And for my long-term projects, I do get paid
Hmm.
like in increments. I don't get paid after every video is done, but most brands pay you after the deliverables
Yep.
are done and not just like, "Oh, it's done. Here you
Here you
go."
go. It's
It's like 30,
months.
30 days, 60 days, or 90 days, sometimes even longer,
Yes.
which I think is a great injustice in the creator economy. I truly do.
It is. Well, we were just talking about how I think that's the new frontier for me
Hmm.
is putting more of more contractually around how I get paid or like
Yeah.
and how fast. I understand there's a lot to go through because there's an agency and then a client. So I
Yeah.
understand like the money transferring there would be tricky. Uh, but just putting like I think I was thinking about putting like if you're after you owe an extra, I
Yeah.
don't know, 500.
Yeah.
Usually it's like a
Late
percentage,
fee. Yeah.
maybe like a late fee of like 3% of the brand deal or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because and I need to think of contractually just a line that I can have them add.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the percentage is going to work out better to just say, hey, if you pay after this date, I'm going to say it's from the posting time.
Yeah.
And then let's say it's like 60 days. If you go past that, the day after, you owe an extra 5%.
Yep.
And I think we just have to do that
Yeah.
because I think, again, it kind of ties back to the industry treating us and creators a little bit like, I don't want to say it is because, again, there is so much on the back end and I understand that's going on,
Yeah.
but treating a little bit like kids. And we've talked about that a little bit where like, you think I don't want / need this like
I have a
bulk.
mortgage to pay. We
Right.
both
I'm
have
like,
mortgages
I
to
have
pay.
a mortgage. I got a family to support. So
Yes.
it's like you can't I guess it surprises me sometimes that people are more lax on the other side when I'm like,
Mhm.
hey, you're a person just like me. You're not rich.
Yeah.
You know that like granted this is like a large lump sum for what you might not think is a lot of work. Granted, for me it's been 5 years of
Yeah.
all this stuff. But it's really important. And I
Yeah.
think that I hope that the industry switches this whole, and maybe it takes creators like us updating the contracts. Because if no one says something's wrong,
Yeah.
the industry is not going to say something's wrong.
Yeah.
So maybe that's our powerful last statement on contracts and waiting till the very, how fast you get paid.
No, seriously. Yeah, it's weird, but I have successfully negotiated. Actually, my first manager I ever had, he was awesome. I miss him. He
Mhm.
had a full-time job at like Google or
Mhm.
something, and he was just doing this like on the side. Love you, Balu, if you remember, if you ever tune into my content. He was great. And that was something I talked about to him. And he really pushed for me to get paid in advance. And a lot of brands did.
We're open to it. See,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you had, like you mentioned, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, they would pay in advance or at least do a deposit. And My thing, so with my long-term brand deals, at least, I pretty much, if it's again a five-figure contract we're talking about, I need something to
Yeah.
get started because I'm putting so much of my financial projections into that.
That
And I need to make sure you are a cash flow positive business and that you're actually going to be able to afford to pay
I was gonna
me.
talk about that because and the economy is even changing right now
Yeah.
too. I'm like, and that's what's like, it's not healthy, but that's where a
Hmm.
lot of my stress, I think,
Yeah.
even sometimes comes from is like, well, why are they late to pay?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is there problems
Yeah.
on the back end?
So I want to know if they're not going to be
Yeah.
able to, I'm not going to, because you hear horror stories. And knock on wood, I only ever had one brand that didn't pay me at
Hmm.
all. And it was
Which is
literally,
crazy to me.
it was literally my like first paid brand deal. And I think it was for like $50. I still have the invoice open in my accounting tool and it's still sending them reminders. And this was like 10, I don't know,
Do
10
you
years
think
ago.
that having that in there causes you a little bit of trauma and
Probably.
stress?
So the company ended up going out of business. So it's probably just going to nowhere. But anyway, okay. The point is, look at the payment terms,
Yeah.
figure out, and negotiate them. Consider negotiating them. If they're like, yeah, this is a net 90, at least see if you can get net 30. And what that means is net means they will pay you
Yeah.
90 days after the final deliverables are due. So try to negotiate it to
Yeah.
30. If it's net 30, try to say, hey, and especially if it's a big project, say, hey, can we do a 50% deposit upon signing to help? Especially if it's like, oh, I have
Yeah.
to travel somewhere to
Yep.
do it, or I have to buy props, or I have to hire somebody to help me produce it. Like you might need that cash flow to be able to do it.
Yeah, and honestly, to get the confidence too is a big part of that. But I think seeing the end of the process where I'm giving them final deliverables,
Mm-hmm.
un there's no, and maybe I need to start even doing
Like
that.
raw.
There's no watermark
Yeah.
or anything on them. If I'm giving them, here's another tip for everybody: watermarks on your
Yeah.
content before you
Like
send it,
drafts.
drafts, or a lower quality,
Mm-hmm.
versus the final one will be higher quality. Uh, yeah, I just really need to be more on top of that because I mean, hearing from you now
Yeah.
that you've gotten ones where it's been ahead of the time, at least getting a deposit.
Mm-hmm.
I think I need to stick to it. But I was going to say that confidence can come from the fact that you're giving them deliverables even
Yeah.
before they pay you or that you post.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't know.
You brought up the next point though, which is really important, which is drafts
Yeah.
and approvals. This is something else I look at in my contracts because this is the part that I hate. Honestly, even more than net 90 payments, approvals.
Yep. A creative person's nightmare.
It's not even like I had one brand that it was a nightmare and they were like, we don't like it.
Yeah.
They literally said I used influencer voice, which was deeply offensive to me.
You're like, please explain what this is.
But
What is
anyway,
it?
yeah. But like most of them are not, they're just like, hey, can you just make this
Yeah.
small tweak? Like it's typically not like a total reshoot or anything.
Mhm.
But what drives me nuts about approvals are that they slow down and mess up my YouTube schedule. I am very rigid
I
about
did
my
not even
upload
think about that for
schedule.
yours. Yeah.
Yeah, except for this week that I'm recording, I actually didn't upload at all this week, but this is one of those rare weeks that I haven't uploaded. I
Mhm.
have been pretty consistent for like 10 years on
Right.
YouTube, especially for the Friday podcast. It's like every Friday it goes out. And it really bothers me when I'm waiting on an
Yeah.
approval and then they like approve it on Thursday night, okay, can you upload the video? I'm like, no, because I have a
Yeah.
podcast going out tomorrow now, and then
Right.
things are going to get weird and it's not going to perform well for
Yeah.
you and blah,
And
blah.
it's called Freelance Friday. I
Yeah.
can't put it on
Yes.
Monday.
Yes, exactly.
Or
So
Saturday.
that's something that I'm actually very bullish about is I'm
Mhm.
like, I need to know how far in advance you need the draft and then how long it's going to take you to get me the approval
Mhm.
so that I can make sure it's scheduled, appropriately.
Yeah.
You do mostly short form, so it probably doesn't matter as much, right?
But you're making me think that I need to be more strict about it because I have had issues to where like I'm starting this process with a bunch of deals 3 months prior, and I've had
Mhm.
situations in the past where all the approvals come the same week.
So you're posting like
Right.
many sponsor, like spawn con, spawn
Yeah,
con,
and
spawn con.
granted, right, like most of my videos, like because on the platform, like there's a lot of views going around, right? To
Mhm.
where from my end, it looks like I'm posting nothing but paid media, and that
Yeah.
would be annoying to people. Most people are probably seeing videos from like a
Yeah.
month ago that are going semi-viral, or what have you, that they're not even seeing
Yeah.
that paid ad. So I feel like no, I mean, I just need to. I think I'm learning that I need to be more even about that too. Of like, usually I'll get the campaign post date, and usually most of them stick to it though.
Yeah.
I will say they'll
Yep.
stick to that end all be all date that they need to post by.
Yeah. So yeah, check that out. And also, I think most of them are pretty, for me, they're usually just like brand feedback, but be mindful if it's like, multiple, like 5 rounds of revisions or
Yeah.
something, like I'm not going to
Usually
do.
2 max is in the contract.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll usually get similar to you. I'll get like little things here and there.
Mhm.
I can imagine yours would be trickier because it's so long
Yeah.
that like they can critique any part, like your voice.
Influencer voice.
Like that they have more time to sit with it and
Yeah.
to make more remarks.
Yeah, and sometimes there are guidelines like this, like if it's in a vlog, for example,
Mhm.
that can be tricky because if I'm just doing like a day in my life, okay, I might be drinking this
Yeah.
liquid death. Well, this is branded technically. So if
Right.
this podcast was sponsored, you can't have any other brands. You can't have like a
Right.
brand on your shirt or
Nope.
whatever.
I have a whole drag closet I'm calling now that I'm
Uh-huh.
building of just plain
Yeah.
shirts and sweaters in different colors.
Yep. Okay, so I guess that's kind of the next step. Kind of really comes before approvals is
Yeah.
typically there's a brief,
Yep.
that they send you once you sign the contract. It's like, here's exactly how we need you to format the post. Here's the hashtags we need you to use, the brands that you need to tag, timelines. Like, I love it when they have examples of other things that's worked well for them. Some people are really intense. Some people give you
Yeah.
like, hey, use this. It
Right.
just depends.
Some are more lax, yeah, and then you kind of have to take this like you get everything sent, it gets approved finally, and honestly, you think the work's done, but then that kind of like that stress and momentum kind of builds up again the moment
Yeah.
they email you and say like, okay, it's go live day.
Yeah.
Because for me, like I have to sit there and review that post.
Yes.
I will review it 7 times, and my attention to detail is getting so much better and it's so good. I will still miss like I'm scared. Not so much on brand deals now because I review it so many times.
Yeah.
But like there was one where I put it out and I had one word misspelled and I was
Uh-huh.
like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I had to delete it and then repost it. But then I
Yeah.
had already emailed the client the link to like the Instagram reel.
Mhm.
And I was just like, you feel like the world is crumbling beneath you.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. I don't
know.
feel this way.
Okay,
That's the
maybe it's the
Virgo.
Virgo perfectionist
I'm
in
like,
me.
it's chill. It's fine.
You're like, it's literally, meanwhile, my Taurus husband's like, okay, just repost it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I'm
oh
like
my
taking a nap. I
gosh.
post it and go to bed.
Oh, it's from my childhood trauma of trying to be perfect. But meanwhile the brand team's like, that's fine, yeah,
Yeah.
just repost it. But yeah, so then you post it, and then honestly, you just can relish.
Yeah.
Then what's really nice is like, but then the payment terms thing
Yep.
kick in, and then that stress kind of comes in a little bit of like you kind of hope to get them soon.
Yeah. What do you use for invoicing?
Wave,
Okay, cool.
which is like I think it's called Wave app technically, or
I
just
used to
wave.com.
recommend them.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna bash a brand, but I actually just had a huge security like incident with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my account got hacked and
Mm.
it took me I wasn't happy with how lax they were. I was like, "Hi, I need to get into my account. Please help me ASAP." And it took like 3 days. So,
Which is a lot for a billing
yeah.
account.
But you can invoice for free through like PayPal
Yeah.
or Wave or there's Stripe.
Wave,
Is it
like
Stripe, I
they've
think?
been like maybe you had to have your issues that they can like get better too, because I know they just did a huge update
Mhm.
last year.
Yeah.
Was this recently? This
Yeah,
updating?
like this week.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And I've used them forever. I don't
Yeah,
want to bash them. I actually don't know if I got hacked or if it was my accountant logging in. But either way, I didn't recognize a login. So like
Yeah,
help
yeah.
me,
No, but it is tricky to like always make sure to just do your research on the one that works for you. To be honest, like it's worked for me. And what's interesting now is like I've used them since the beginning.
Yeah.
So I have all this data
Yeah.
that I kind of refer back to a lot too. So it's a little tricky.
But
To switch.
honestly, with brand deals, here's the other thing. This is another thing I get asked about a lot is like, is this sketchy? Most of them pay me through like a, like payroll system type of
Oh
situation.
yeah, I usually do payroll so that I avoid any fees with credit cards. and
Yeah,
things
like
that.
they do a direct deposit,
Yeah.
if you will. So with freelance clients, again, you're invoicing, like I use Honeybook for my
Mhm.
freelance clients. I don't invoice my clients my brand deal clients through Honeybook because usually they just like add me into their back end.
Yeah, I just make the invoice PDF
Yes.
to send to them.
Which you could even do that in like Canva or
Right.
Google Docs, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you could.
Just to like have a record of it and then give them. So yeah, again, this is why it's so important to vet the client to make sure that it is a legitimate brand before you give out your bank account number, or sometimes you'll have to do a tax form, right?
Always 1099
Yep.
or W-9.
W-9 form. So those are all real things to look out for if you're new to
giving
this.
your social security number.
Yes.
Well, also I found, or you can give out your LLC EIN.
EIN if you have one. So that's kind of the process, and then you just wait, right?
And talking it out, I'm like, that is a lot.
And that's why it costs so much.
Which is why you shouldn't settle for less than $500. I don't know what your floor is, but just like, I hope this podcast inspires you to know the not work that goes into, because really I wouldn't even consider that the work. We didn't even talk about shooting the video.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's
right. But it goes to show how much can go into
just for the admin stuff.
Right, just admin, just admin. Which again, like we just talked about how like the cost of being a content creator.
Yeah.
Yes, you could very well go hire some people to do these things for you. But then you got to trust them to like sensitive information. You got to, and honestly, I think it's good to learn.
And that just adds another step in. If you're working with a manager, again, maybe we can do a video about this if you guys want it, but working with a manager, basically it's all of that. Plus now you have another waiting period with your management company and then they pay you.
And then they take out their fees and things like that or what have you. But,
so anyway, that's pretty much step by step. Let us know if you have any questions about any of that. If you want us to go deeper on anything. As always,
leave us a review because it helps us reach more content creators and build our little community we're trying to here.
Yeah.
And
subscribe
if you're watching on YouTube, follow, do all the things, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.